We have catered to the simplest. I'm trying to find a good way to say it, and it's really difficult to say it in a way that actually it captures what I'm thinking. We have catered to programmers who have spent the least amount of time programming. Maybe their capability of understanding fundamental concepts, difficult concepts, hard concepts of programming is like they do have that capability, but they have not yet reached that capability. Therefore, we cater to them first. So all these tools, build steps, things that we're about to go over, they cater to these people. Part of the reason is because businesses need to ship something and drive value. Now, I went over this yesterday, and essentially what's happened is back in like the 70s, 80s, a decent part of the 90s, we had programmers who entered into the web dev space, but they had to start with a far more restrictive set of hardware, which means that they actually had to know something. As a matter of fact, I would make the argument that you could pull somebody straight, you could just time warp them straight out of the 80s, give them a kind of like a map overview of hardware we use today, and they would pretty much understand what's going on. Not so with web. Web has become a completely different thing. And what happened is companies that thrived off of the booming economy of web in the late 90s, early 2000s didn't actually have web developers. Who were web developers before there were web developers? It was programmers who actually knew their shit because they worked in restrictive, sometimes complex hardware mechanisms. These are the guys you would pull and you'd say, hey, we have a business that runs on the web. I know you don't know web, but can you help us build for the web anyways? Here are the specifications of what it takes to ship HTML from a server to a browser, how it works, etc. And someone like that is going to sit down and actually, for the most part, understand what it means when you send data or when you send HTML over the wire, when you send a post request, when you send, dynamic data versus static data, how you start, like all these things are going to be very easy to grasp for someone who came out of that world. And then as time goes on, these people get older and they start retiring, or they get that sweet exit money or whatever it is, they're leaving the company, and businesses start shitting themselves and they're going, oh no, we don't have people who know as much as this guy does. And I'm not just saying that, I've been in the room where this conversation took place. And what happens is the executives get in a room, everybody's panicking because the most knowledgeable guy in the room is leaving soon. And he's the most knowledgeable because he comes from an era where these things are taught to you somewhat by necessity, if nothing else. Whereas the people who come out straight out of the web dev world just focus on the web dev space and that's all they know. So they don't have that broader depth of what's going on with the hardware and software and all of that. So businesses go, well, what are we going to do? We don't have the developers in house to handle the same things that these smart guys, quote unquote, the guys with a broader depth of knowledge do. Well, how about you, Mr. Broader Depth Knowledge guy, create a tool or a system or a library or a language or a framework where our developers who don't know as much as you can do the same thing as you, so that our business can keep running. And for a lot of developers in that position, this sounded very appealing, because it meant that, say, their stocks or whatever, skin in the game they had for a company would just expand, right? So they could ride off into the sunset and they could trust that the company would generally head in the right direction because they created a tool that catered to developers who didn't know as much as they did. Not because they couldn't know it, not because they were incapable of knowing it, not because they were stupider, nothing like that. It's just that they didn't, and there was no incentive for them to. Why does that incentive not exist? Because a lot of those developers go, holy crap, you can't expect us to meet requirements that this guy can meet with the current knowledge that we have. And so businesses go, oh, well, when like 100 developers tell us that they can't do something that somebody else could do, well, then we better cater to the 100 developers because we still have to pay their paychecks, which means we still have to make money, which means we still have to ship something for our customers to actually have something to pay us for.